Greetings, 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 greetings. What it do, what it do, what it do. Happy Sunday to each and every one of you, man. Let me make sure Facebook is good in terms of the audio. We're about to get into this Sunday school with your brother Chief Kalinago Flying Eagle. Hold on for 1 second. Boom, we got that here. Each and every one of you, man. All right, we got audio. Let's get into this build. Let's get into this build. All right, now check this out, right? The information you're about to hear, maybe some of you, heard it before. Most of you may have. Some of you maybe haven't heard about it. You know what I mean? But the point is, is always putting things in context. The constant repetition of giving you the facts. So you are able to once again articulate things when you speak to people because the brainwash is real. All right, the brainwash is real only because it was a constant play of redundancy in terms of the educational system, the false narratives of teaching original indigenous people. All right, what do you do, brother Corey? All right, so with that being said, we're about to get into this Sunday build. You may want to get a pen or a pad, take some copious notes, or you could just make sure you save the video so you could go back to it. Another reason, once again, the main reason for doing this video is for educational purposes. All right. I am tired of seeing people who look like me, you know what I'm saying, go through this system being abused under the color of law. And again, people are just so caught up with the emotions, not realizing that is the emotions they have attached to the false identity is what's enslaving them. So when you look around and you see the police or different agents, of the corporation, they're treating you certain ways, then you think it's because of the color of your skin. It truly isn't. It's not. It is because, once again, because of your ignorance. All right. And I do not mean this is in any form of disrespect. All right. This is strictly coming from a place of love. All right. But we definitely have to step up. And I'm doing again these videos so that you're able to have enough information, enough, tools, okay, so to speak, in your arsenal, all right, so that you're able to defend what you're saying, all right. And I'm always going to say this and reiterate, it's not going to take a whole lot of us to shake up this system, all right. And when I say shake up the system, I'm talking about shake off the lies so we could start making some type of, solid foundation as to who we are on our ancestral land, okay. This is our motherland, all right. Now, like I always tell people, I have nothing against Africa. Okay. If you feel you're from Africa or, then hey, the United States will pay for you to go to Africa. They will give you a free ticket because, it just is what it is. It's better for them if everybody who say they're Africans go to Africa. You know what I'm saying? So just so you know that the United States, if you're so passionate about it, then you could do that. All right. Go to the embassy, like I said, claim asylum. You could do that and go back to your mother country. But for those of us who know that America is our motherland, then we need to stay here and stand and defend that. All right. In all ways possible. But first, you have to have the information so you're able to, solidify the things that you're saying. So we're about to do a little bit of reading. What's going on, Zazie? We're about to do a little bit of reading because, reading is fun for the mental. I love to read. So we're going to do a little bit of reading. Let me just go ahead and share my screen for you. All right. And I also put that information in the link below. So you guys could definitely, you have access to it because when I teach, I just don't like to give information without, the source of reference. I want to make sure that you have the information. So it's not just Chief Kalinago talking or me just saying anything. All right. I want to make sure you have the information so you're able to do your own due diligence. All right. Greetings, Sister Christy. Okay, so let us go do some reading. All right. Okay, so here we go. And if you're able to see the screen, it might take a little time to populate. Then do me a favor, type 1 in the chat real quick. If you're able to see the screen, type 1 in the chat. Okay, type 1 in the chat. This is about 13 pages, so it's not a lot of reading. Like I said, I love to read. Okay, so So 13 pages is a breeze. All right, is a breeze. Don't mind the noise in the background. My mom is cooking, so don't worry about that. All right. But anyway, greetings, brother Terrence. All right. Now check this out. Like I said, this is about 13 pages, and this is by J.D. Forbes. Okay. I'm also gonna, cross-reference that with just. I'm not gonna go into the Christopher Columbus. I'm not gonna go into the Benjamin Franklin. I've already done that. Okay, in certain videos. All right, but I'm just gonna kind of cross-reference that with what J.D. Forbes, said compared to what Varazona said, Giovanni Varazona. Okay, and as you could see, what they're saying is basically essentially the same thing. A lot of times when people hear the term Negro, black, okay, they associate that with Africans, and that's, you see, that was done intentionally within the educational system. Why? Because whenever once again, Europeans. And what people don't realize is that in different eras or different centuries, certain words meant different things. Okay. Black could have meant something different in the 1600s opposed to what it means now. You feel what I'm saying? African could have meant something different in the 1600s opposed to what it means now. You feel me? So when you realize that the trickery of the words, okay, the play on words, okay, is literally what is being used to make you enslave yourself or to detach you from your ancestral land, which is the American continent, then it becomes a problem because you don't know what the words mean. And you're going based on what they taught you and not realizing that that was part of colonization, okay? Taking our children and separating them from their parents. And I am so disgusted, and I'm gonna keep it quite frank, okay? I am so disgusted with so many of these so-called native people. They know the truth, but yet still they stand on that throne, okay, holding this title of being American Indians or the original people, knowing that they're not. And they know that, but they're reaping the perks or the benefits of being called Native Americans. When the truth of the matter is, it's a fact that at that time, native, all native means, and it does mean right now, native only means to be born. So the term native in the 1600s would not, okay, be applicable to what it's being called native today. Because back then, native actually meant autochthonous, okay, which is someone who sprung from the land. All right. However, in this new construct of Native American, all it means is to be born. And they know this. You feel me? They know this, but they get away with it. Why? Because we are not stepping up. You see what I'm saying? If there is a void to be filled, then what do you think is going to happen? Okay. This is life. And if there's a space, something will occupy the space, whether it's air, whether it's water, whether it's wind, it doesn't matter. Something is going to occupy the space. Or you feel what I'm saying? So now, with that being said, if it's a fact that people were already in the Americas and then colonizers came and took these people's statuses away, then how are you going to explain in the school system where these people at? You cannot go ahead and continue to tell the lie that they died from smallpox, which that's not true. When the truth of the matter is, it was the Europeans who came here who were dying from the smallpox. Okay? And people are confusing the people who came here as colonizers to be pale people or colorless people. That's where you got tricked. Once again, you were giving the Caucasian man too much credit. The Caucasian man did not come here and enslave anybody. That's why you will not get reparations, because they didn't do anything to you. All they did was they saw an opportunity and they stepped up. They played both sides. In fact, all sides, to me, which is genius. You know what I'm saying? And how could have they could have played that so well? It is because they went through the trenches of enslavement themselves. Okay, so they were in the trenches with people who became enslaved, and they all worked together to fight for that freedom. Okay, so y'all got to get it, man. But anyway, enough talking. Let us get into the reading. All right. for those of you who are still convinced that, you know, you're Africans. The use of the terms Negro and Black to include persons of Native American ancestry in Anglo North America. Now, once again, let us not get all these terms. You know, Anglo right now means, of course, pale people. But when you hear the term Saxon, Saxon are people of color. Okay? So you have to be you have to know the words, man. Know the words and what they mean. And again, not just what they mean, but in the time that it was used, you have to know what it means. Okay? In 1854, the California State Supreme Court sought to bar all non-Caucasians from equal citizens and civil rights. The court stated, now they use that term specifically Caucasians, because remember, I showed y'all Caucasians are not white. I have shown you that on many, many occasions, what the term free white person means. And it does not include Caucasians. So I don't know why y'all continue to call Caucasians, colorless people, call them white. Because you don't realize that you are the one giving them the power. You are the one giving them life, because the power of life and death is actually in your tongue. So if you are giving them the status of being white, which means superior, which means nobility, which means pure, which means clean, okay? That's what white signifies. And Black, dirty, poor, stinky, sordid. I mean, the most, it's detestable, okay? Sense of emotions is attached, and negative emotions is attached to the word Black. So when you start calling yourself Black and you're calling them white, they are always going to be superior, okay? They are always going to be your landlords, and you will not get it. A lot of you will not get it because of your emotions. So let's read this again. In 1854, the California State Supreme Court sought to bar all non-Caucasians from equal citizenship and civil rights, the court stated. The word Black may include all Negroes, but the term Negro does not include all Black persons. Now, I'm going to read this again, because you see, reading is fun for the mental, but not just reading, but reading with understanding. You have to take your time and read into the word before you could get anything out of the word, okay? Like I told you before, I've been telling you this for years. I don't read to finish. I read to comprehend. Let's read again. The word Black may include all Negroes. May. May doesn't mean must, okay? It's like most likely to include all Negroes, but Negro does not include all Black persons. Why? Because when the so-called Black Europeans came here, once again, let me reiterate, in the 1600s, in 1492, it wasn't the Caucasian man who came on this land. It was so-called Black nobles from Europe that came here. That's why it was easy for them to infiltrate, because they looked like us, okay? Our ancestors saw their brothers from another mother, meaning that across the sea, another continent. So they embraced them with open arms until they realized that doing that was a mistake, because now they was intruding and taking the land. Okay, and that's when the animosity and the war started. It was people that who looked alike. That's why I say again, skinfolk and kinfolk. And then when they came, they saw these people of of color all over the Americas. So they called them, particularly in when they first came into the Americas, they called them Negro de Terra. Okay, and then they called Africans Negro de Guinea. You feel me? So we're not Negroes. They just identified us as Negroes. Okay? Keep that in mind. Let's read this again. The word Black may include all Negroes, but the term Negro does not include all Black persons. We are of the opinion that the words white, Negro, mulatto, and Black persons, whenever they occur in our Constitution, must be taken in their generic sense, that the words black person in the 14th section must be taken as contraire, distinguished from white, and necessarily includes all races of other than the Caucasian race. Okay? Now, politically, Caucasians are not, well, politically, Caucasians are white. Okay? But that's a status. They're not white in complexion. Okay? No one is. Just like no one is black in complexion. Now, as convoluted as the quote may be, it tends to express a strong tendency in the history of the United States toward creating two broad classes of people, white and non-white, citizen and non-citizen or semi-citizen. The tendency to create a two-caste society often clashed with the reality of a territory which includes many different types of people of all colors and different degrees of intermixture of European, American, African, and Asian. Native American people, whether of unmixed ancestry or mixed with other stocks, were at times affected by the tendency to create a purely white black social system, especially when living away from a reservation or ancestral homeland. So, if the colonial system decide, well, hey, this is no longer a reservation, we're going to change it into an urban community, then guess what? You are now being categorized as either black or white. Okay? All they had to do was change the definition of where you live. So, not realizing that every ghetto is a reservation. That's why years ago I did a video, Indians in the Hood, Indians in the Ghetto. I've been teaching y'all that for over 10 years now. You see what I'm saying? In fact, longer than that. But the point is, you have to know these things, how our identity was stolen, the paper genocide. Okay? Let's read. In the British slave colonies of North America along the Atlantic coast, many persons of American ancestry were at times classified as blacks, Negroes, mulattoes, or people of color, and these terms were, of course, used for people of African ancestry. Now, let me ask you a question. Why would they call American Indians black? Now, someone may say, well, Chief, hey, they just called anybody black or a Negro if they were not Caucasian. Okay, that's an argument I could buy, but let's read a little. Let's read a little further. The manner in which Americans and part Americans were sometimes classified as mulattoes and people of color from New England to South Carolina and in Spanish Empire are explored elsewhere. Like I told y'all before, okay, the two main culprits were the English and the Spanish. Of course, you had other minor players such as the Dutch, the French, the Germans, okay, etc., etc. You had a few other minor players, fighting to colonize the Americas, but the two main crowns were the Spanish and the English. So you had Spanish America and you had English America. Now, let us continue. The purpose here is to illustrate how the term Negro has always been applied to people of American descent. In other words, they're telling you that the word and the term Negro, as in Negro de Terra, okay, has always been applied to people of American descent, meaning that you were descended from American aborigines. You were descended from the people that were in the Americas from time immemorial. Okay? You feel me? And once again, you have to be mindful with this DNA test. Okay? When they tell you that you're a Ghanaian or you're from Nigeria, 95, 97%, that's a lie. Okay? These people are working with the Colonization Society. Okay? In the likes of 23andMe, all those different, you have to do, if you do, you have to do a private test. If you do, but that's not necessary because why? The burden of proof is on the accuser. Let them prove to us that we are not American Aboriginals. Okay? That is the key. So once again, be very mindful with this popular DNA sites. They will put you in Africa. Okay? We don't have some American Indian. We are the American Indians. Now, let me make this quite clear because I have some Lincoln poops, okay, who think they're wise enough to say, oh, well, you call yourself American Indian. We are not. Nobody said we were. It's a misnomer. Just like saying we're American Aboriginals. I could also debunk I could also debunk that by saying, hey, we didn't call ourselves American Aboriginals. All right. So there's no sense in getting, you know, too defensive when it comes to using the word American Indian. It's just that we were all classified as American Indian, and within international law, it is acknowledged. So yes, we are the American Indians, but yes, I am making the disclaimer that it is still a misnomer. But I would rather call myself an American Indian than Negro, Black, or Colored, or African American. Okay, because those are the word or the term American Indian is actually in the Constitution. Okay, so for all the naysayers, be ignorant and foolish as you are. Go ahead and continue to play with me. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, now let's proceed. The possibility that Native Americans were quite commonly called Negroes. Why is that? Why would they call Native Americans? They didn't say some American Indians. They say Native Americans were called Negroes. Why is that? Does that even make sense? Hmm? The possibility that Native Americans were quite commonly called Negroes is very much supported by Portuguese usage. Once again, you have to use the word or the term, okay, in context of the time, because a word in the 1600 was different from the definition in the 1700 and the 1800s and the 1900s. Again, it's the word play. Okay, it's the word play. You did? So let's keep that in mind. Let us continue to read. During the colonial period, Brazilian Indians were repeatedly referred to as Negroes de terra, Negroes of the land. So let me ask you a question. How is that they had Negroes of the land, just like how they have Negroes of the land in Africa, in Asia, and Europe? Why? Because so-called Negroes, I'm saying so-called Negroes, we populated the entire earth. Okay? I mean, y'all could be what y'all want. Be half and half, be milk. I don't care. I'm just giving you the information. Once again, y'all so stuck in Africa, y'all are lost in the mix. Okay? So be what you want. I'm just giving y'all the facts. Okay? All right, let's go. A great many examples from the 16th and later centuries are cited by George Frederici in his analysis of Portuguese sources. These do not have to be repeated. I'm repeated here, but suffice to say that it was so commonly that finally in 1755, a royal decree had to be issued as follows. Among the regrettable practices which have resulted in the disparagement of the Indians, one prime abuse is the unjustifiable and scandalous practice of calling them Negroes. Okay? That was a disparagement. Okay? It was unjustifiable by calling us Negroes. Like I said, a lot of you have this emotional tie to Africa just because you may have seen or heard that one of your ancestors or some of your ancestors were slaves. Because being called a slave doesn't mean that you came from Africa, Europe, or Asia. All it means that you were enslaved. Like typical example now, we are all slaves of the system because we are not operating in our natural status. So does that mean we all came from Africa? No. So once again, man, stop having this emotional attachment to a place that you're not from just because of what they taught you or what you heard. Let us read again. Perhaps by so doing, the intent was no other than to induce in them the belief that by their origins they had been destined to be the slave of whites, as is generally conceded to be the case of blacks from coast of Africa. You see what I'm saying? So, because let me break that down for the layman's out there. Okay? Let me break that down. All right? Once again, like I said, I don't care where you're from. Okay? You could be African. It doesn't matter to me. You could go ahead and do your 23andMe to tell you from Africa. You could believe that's fine. That's on you. Once again, you have attachments to a place that you're not from. Now, some of you may be from there. That's fine. Okay? So you could be half and half. That's fine. I'm not disputing that. But the majority of us, over 95% of us in the Americas, we did not come from Africa. And that's a fact. Okay? So what are the chances that you, out of the 95%, that you are? I don't know. Maybe you are. I don't care. Okay? Now, let us continue to read. Let us read this part again. Perhaps by so doing, the intent was no other to induce in them the belief that by their origins they had been destined to be slaves of whites, as is generally conceded to be the case of blacks from the coast of Africa. Now, let's put this in context. Okay? You have to realize that when they're talking about whites, they are not talking about Caucasians. They are talking about literally anyone from Europe, originally from Europe, and we're talking about originally from Europe. Okay, and I already broke down who white people were to y'all. So literally, it was people who looked like themselves that were literally going into Africa and enslaving their own people. It wasn't the Caucasian man. Okay, it wasn't the Caucasian man. All right, I have to keep reiterating that. You are giving the pale man too much credit. He did not enslave nobody. Right now, yes, they are controlling the system, or they're managing the system, so to speak, because they're not controlling. I promise you, the people who are controlling the system, they look just like us. The pale man is just the gatekeeper. I have to let y'all know this. Okay? They're temporary holders of the crown. Okay? Keep that in mind. And when you talk about Native American had African slaves, it was our own people enslaving people who look like them. Okay, the people let's get this in context. The people that call themselves Native Americans right now, they never enslaved anybody. In fact, they were slaves themselves. So y'all got to stop playing with these words if y'all don't know what it means. Okay? So by you calling yourself an African, automatically it means that you are a slave. So y'all want to be Africans? Be Africans. Do you? Okay? The directors will not permit henceforth that anybody may refer to an Indian as a Negro. Okay? Nor that they themselves may use the epithet among themselves as currently the case. Man, listen, Tay, whoever you are, Tay Sweet, don't tell me I need to do anything. Okay? Trust me, I'm well versed in this. I had a conversation from the horse's mouth, okay, from the main Cherokee tribe in Oklahoma. And I had the dude, one of the main dudes, confess that his grandmother was a black woman, an Indian. Okay? They did not own anybody. These people are not American Indians. All right? So if you cannot get that, this is the wrong platform for you. You did? Trust me, I spoke to the Cherokee Nation, like I said, okay? And he had to admit that if you perm, okay, if you take you perm, you take a hot comb and you perm his grandmother hair, she's a black woman from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Why is that? If you perm your hair, it doesn't change your skin complexion. Oh, trust me, everything I'm stating is facts. Okay? Don't worry about that, man. I know how to do this. Like I said, I really don't have time for this distraction right now. Okay? Because I'm here to teach people, and I don't want to be distracted. Okay? So I just had to block that person because it's a distraction. Let us proceed. And I'm not saying that nobody could disagree with me. That's not the point. But if I'm telling you that I had a conversation with the Cherokee Nation, the main one from Oklahoma, and the man told me that his grandmother was a black woman and she's an original Indian, how are you going to come on here and try to dispute that and argue with me? That's why I said, you know what? I don't want to do the back and forth. I just block that person, man. Period, because it's a distraction. And that's why it's so hard for our people to get anywhere, okay? Because of those disagreeables, all right? I call them agents of confusion. That's what they will put in our mix, all right? To keep us where we are in the status of being black and African American. You feel me? Now let us proceed. This Portuguese usage is extremely significant, not only because American or part American slaves could be referred to as Negroes in the early shipment records, but also because it very much affects one's analysis of population statistics in colonial Brazil, where in fact the categories of Negro, mulatto must have often included domesticated or enslaved Indians and mixed bloods. So once again, you have to realize that because your ancestor were a slave or were slaves, it doesn't mean that they came from across the seas, particularly outside the Americas, as slaves. No, that's not what it meant. And people don't realize that. People don't realize because you looked a certain way, automatically you were considered a slave or considered African. Why? Because at that time you had so-called black nobles, okay, or even in Africa, enslaving their own people. The same way we had some of our American Indian ancestors enslaving each other. That is something that was happening from literally time immemorial. Okay? That's facts. Let's proceed. Insofar as the term Negro became synonymous with slave or servile status, it lost any specific color reference and became a general term of abuse, darker people preferring to be called preto as a result. Okay, they didn't even want to be called Negroes. They was like, just call us preto. All right, but the point is, the term Negro just became synonymous with slave. Okay, why? Because the nobles who came from Europe, the other so-called black people, they were nobility. They called themselves, they were, they thought that they were put on earth to control everybody else because they had a monarchy of kings and queens, the same way we had our own version of kings and queens. All right, but the God that they serve, they told them that they had to go subdue the entire earth. You feel me? So the term Negro became synonymous with slavery. So because you were called Negro or you see Negro in a document, it doesn't mean that you were an imported slave from across the Atlantic Ocean. I have to keep reiterating that. Now, it is highly likely that the Spaniards also referred to slaves generally as Negroes in the Caribbean, and that the Dutch took over the same general practice, since Negro and Nega were not Dutch words and had no immediate equivalent except Swat. Okay, Swat or Swathi also means is also synonymous with black. Okay, also the term Dunker and Bruin. All right, now let us go look at that real quick because I like to cross reference. Give me 1 second. And Braun. Okay, let us go ahead and share this real quick and look at Dunker. Okay, so you could see what I'm talking about. Dunker, right here. The term Dunker means dark. Okay, dark, pronounced
Dunker.
Donka. So all these different colorful words were used, okay, to identify people of color. Donka.
Dunker.
All right. Another word that we just heard, Bruin, okay, or Braun. Let's hear the pronunciation.
Bruin.
Bruin. Bruin means literally, okay, brown. Okay, brown. Brown. Now let us look to see what a brewing beer looks like, because I like to show these things. So again, when you see certain words, you are able to see exactly what these people are referring to, because they trick you. Just like when they say red Indian, you think red Indian is those natives. No, a red Indian was brown. Okay, brown. Okay. Now let us look what a brune beer, okay, looks like. Let us tap on the image. Okay, this is what brune is. Okay, brune. Look at the color of brune. Huh? Look at the color of brune. It is brown. Okay. Now let us proceed with the reading. Let me continue here. Okay, brother Will, all is well, man. All is well. All is well. Hope all is well with you as well. All right. Let us continue. So as you can see, brown, dunker, brown, all those words, colorful terms, right? Thus, Spanish Negro could be translated as dark or brown as well as black, which is SWAT. Okay. Undoubtedly, this usage facilitated making reference to all slaves as Negroes or negas in the Dutch language. Moreover, it is significant that a Spaniard residing in Antwerp in the early 17th century, the preparer of the dictionary, saw Negro as being translated in a number of ways in both French and Dutch. By the latter half of the 16th century, the English were referring to the people of Africa as Ethiopians, blackamoors, Negroes, and Moors somewhat interchangeably. Okay, I'm going to read that again. And when we talk about the 1600 English, we are not talking about Caucasians. We are talking about so-called black people. Okay, the only distinction or differentiation, it was the status. They were kings, queens, and people of nobility, like the Stuarts, okay, like the Ross, okay, like the Gun, okay. Harriet Tubman was related to a Stuart. I know a lot of you may say Harriet Tubman was a fairy tale. No, she wasn't. Okay, she wasn't freeing enslaved people from Africa. She was freeing the nobles from Scotland and took them to England. I have the documents to prove it. You dig? Okay, let's read that again. By the latter half of the 16th century, the English were referring to the people of Africa as Ethiopians, blackamoors, Negroes, and Moors somewhat interchangeably. Negro gradually came to be the dominant term, especially after exhaustive contact with the Spaniards and the Portuguese. What is not clear, because those nobles, they did not use the words dark or Negro or black to identify themselves. They used terms such as blonde. They used terms such as sanguine. They used terms such as swarthy or tawny. They did not call themselves in terms of description of their complexion. They did not use the word black, but yet still they look the same. They just changed the words again because they considered themselves to be nobles, which they were. Okay? Now, what is not clear is the extent of which the term Negro was consciously translated as black. Okay? The automatic association of Negro with black color cannot be assumed since since made black Africans are actually of medium, or since most black Africans are of medium or dark brown color. Like I said, nobody is black, not even Africans. Okay, it's either they are a medium brown or they are a dark brown or a deep brown. Nobody's black. Y'all don't seem to get this. But once again, what do I know, right? In any case, another association gradually arose, and that was between Negro and slave. Early legislation commonly referred to Negro and other slaves, or to Negro, mulatto, and Indian slaves. Okay, when people hear of Indian slave, that's why these so-called natives, they could get away. Okay, they could get away with telling you that they control slaves, making you think it was you. Okay, over the years, Negro and Black both became synonymous with enslavement. In 1702, an observer wrote that the wealth of Virginia consisted of slaves or Negroes. I'm going to repeat that. In 1702, the observer wrote, an observer, pardon me, wrote that the wealth of Virginia consisted of slaves or Negroes. Now, let me ask you, now, because you see slave or Negro, automatically you're going to assume they come from Africa. And that was the intended purpose of playing the word games. Okay? Mission accomplished. Because a lot of you Negroes think you're African. Okay? By 1806, Virginia judges ruled that a person who was of a white appearance was to be presumed free. But in the case of a person visibly appearing to be of a slave race, it is incumbent upon him to make out his freedom. In other words, a Stephen Curry, a Clay Thompson, they would be presumed to be free, right? But yet still, both Stephen Curry's parents are so-called Negroes. You see, y'all gotta get this, man. And anyone who's darker, okay, they would have to fight a little harder, even if they were American Indian, to get their freedom. Now you see the game that was played, right? Okay. In 1819, South Carolina judges stated flatly the word Negro has mixed meaning. Open parenthesis, open brackets, slaves, close bracket, right? So once again, Negroes has a mixed or a fixed meaning, slave, period. What the English meant by the term Negro when they first became when it first began to use it is not clear. Once again, when these so-called black nobles, when they started using the word or the term Negro, okay, the first use, when it was first used, it wasn't quite clear because it was confusing. You call us Negroes, but yes, so you look like us. So once again, it clearly states that Negro was a status. It wasn't a description in terms of complexion because they look just like us. It was a status. All right. If you didn't know that they were nobles and you put these people on a field together, you would all call them Negroes. They would all be called Negroes. Certainly, it was not then synonymous with slave, as a great many persons so classified were free, both in England and Virginia, which proves my point. Okay? Even in England, the people were Negroes. Even in Portugal, the people were Negroes. Even in Asia, the people were Negroes. All over Europe, the people were Negroes. I'm talking about the original people. Just like in Virginia. Did it mean an African, a black person, or any dark-skinned individual? That begs the question. Because that's what you people are thinking because of what they taught you. As long as you are of a dark hue, a so-called colored person, you got to be African. That's why they trick y'all. That's why they could kill you at will and get away with it, because it is still codified that once you are considered African, you are dead in law. And African is associated with black, now Negro. That's why y'all people perish for the lack of knowledge, man. And the funny thing is this: real Africans don't get shot by the cops. It's only African Americans. But once again, what does Chief Kalinago knows, right? Let's read some more. Today, the term is not widely employed in Britain, although the word black is used to refer to people of various skin colors from what? South Asia, the Middle East, the West Indies, and Africa. Most Native Americans, if living in Britain today, would be called or be regarded as black, especially if the ancestry were not known. So if in Great Britain there are people walking around looking like you, if they know that they're American, they still call them black. What does that say for you living in America that's already an American aborigine being called black? And even if they don't know where you're from, they still call you black. Why? Because black is associated with Africa, and Africa is codified as slave inherently into perpetuity. Man, I don't think y'all ready for the Sunday school, man. Let us read some more because reading is fun for the mental. An example from the West Indies is especially illuminating. In 1764, William Young was sent to Saint Vincent as part of British occupation of that island. Living on Saint Vincent were about 3,000 black Sharibs or Caribs or free Negroes, about 100 red Sharibs or Indians, and some 4,000 French and their slaves, according to Young. The British found it difficult to control the Caribs, and the wars were fought with them in 1771 to 1772, and again during 1795 to 1796. During the latter crisis, Young wrote an extremely anti-Carib tract designed to prove that the Caribs should be removed from St. Vincent. They were eventually defeated, and some 5,000 were shipped to an island near the coast of Honduras. Let me ask you a question. Why didn't they send them to Africans if they were African? Why didn't they send them to Africa in the 1700s if they were Africans? Why not? They couldn't send them to Africa. You know why? Because they were not Africans. So it's the same thing they did all over the Americans. Took so-called black people and shipped them to different places and tell them they're Africans. Young was anxious to prove that the so-called black Caribs were not true aborigines, but were in fact Negro colonists. You hear that? Negro colonist. Now, how could an African be a colonist when he was a slave? You see what I'm saying? Like, y'all got to learn the wordplay, man. I'm going to read that again. Young, a gentleman, he was anxious, adamant, to prove that the so-called black Caribs were not aborigines, but were in fact colonists. So in other words, if you came from another typical example, right? If you came from Virginia and you went into Massachusetts, okay, and claiming some type of status, they would call you a Negro colonist because you were not part of that so-called country at that time, because each of those individual places were called countries. All right? Or free Negroes or Negro usurpers, pardon me. This was important to him because he wanted to show they had no bona fide land rights or aboriginal title. And that was the key, my brothers and sisters. Calling you black or African was to take away your aboriginal title or your bona fide land rights. But y'all don't get it. We over here paying taxes. We over here paying tolls. Why? Because you want to be called black. Not realizing that was the purpose, to take away your aboriginal title. But you still want to defend it, right? Let us proceed. For our purposes, the interesting point admitted by Young is that the so-called blacks or Negroes were occasionally tawny and mixed complexion because of American ancestry, and that their customs, personal names, and language were those of native Caribs. Still further, Young admitted that they had repeatedly intermarried with American women. He consistently refers to them as Negro nonetheless. Young also replayed a great deal of hearsay. Okay, that is just his words. And I promise you, if you go in court today, nobody could win a case of hearsay. I guarantee you that. Okay? I promise you, no one could go into court right now and in a true court, a court of records, okay, and win a case based on hearsay. So let's read this again. Young also replayed a great deal of hearsay information about how the black Caribs had originated, which is without foundation for analysis. No foundation whatsoever. But just because of the complexion of their skin, you call them black and you're saying that they are Negro colonists. But yet still they were supposed to be slaves, right? All right. The important point is this, that a people thoroughly American in identity, culture, and language were called black and Negro. I'm going to read this again for those of you who might miss it. Okay? Let me just highlight that for y'all. Let me highlight that once here. Okay? Here we go. The important point is this, that a people, not some people, but a people, thoroughly American in identity, culture, and language were called black and Negro solely because of being mixed with African ancestry. Okay? Let us read. This tendency continues incidentally among white scholars who even today refuse to accept the Caribs, avoid feelings of Indianness, and continue to call them black. In 1619, some 20 Negroes were brought to Virginia. Now they got y'all thinking that these Negroes were Africans. You see what I'm saying? That's how this system is laughing at you and they're making fun of you. That's why they think they're superior to you, because they trick you into thinking that these 20 Negroes were Africans. But I could prove to you otherwise. Okay? At least 11 have names of what? Spanish or probably Spanish character. Why? Because they were from Spain. They were not from Africa. They were colonizers coming here to set up shop. Man, I tell you, man, this thing is so easy. It's not even funny. And it makes me laugh. At the same time, it makes me want to cry. Okay? Because now y'all over here celebrating Juneteenth, celebrating the honorary date of June 19, 1619, because that's when your ancestors came from Africa. But yet still, they're not going to tell you that these people were Spaniards from Spain, okay, that came here to set up shop for Isabella and Ferdinand. Oh my goodness, man. This is so heartbreaking. It's not even funny, man. It's not even funny. Okay? Later, they were joined by Negroes and mulattoes with names such as Antonio, several of them, okay, and John Pedro. All right? These Spanish-derived servants could well have been a part of what? American ancestry. However, no evidence is available except that they were largely secured from captured Spanish vessels, insinuating that they could have been taken from different parts of the Americas. Because remember, they already had Spanish America, where they were enslaving the American Indians until Isabella and Ferdinand say, nah, man, we got to stop enslaving these Indians, man. So they brought some of them to Virginia. But y'all think they're African, right? My goodness. In 1776, one Gowen, an Indian servant, acquired his freedom in Virginia. 2 decades earlier, Mehil Gowen, called a Negro, also acquired his freedom. It would appear that the Negro was probably father to the Indian in this case. So what they did was, in 1676, it was an Indian servant. But a few years later, okay, it became Negro. Let us read some more. In 1670, the population of Virginia colony was said to be 40,000, including 2,000 black slaves. Evidence indicate that there could not have been that many Africans there, and also that there were great many American slaves or servants. Let's read that again. Okay, let's read this again, man. In 1670, the population of Virginia colony was said to be 40,000, including 2,000 black slaves. But let us say evidence, okay? We're not talking about hearsay. We are not talking about speculations. We are not talking about assumptions. Evidence, okay? Evidence, meaning that I could bring that to a court. You feel me? And prove emphatically that these people were not African. It says evidence indicates that there could not have been that many Africans there, and also that there were a great many American slaves or servants. So once again, because your ancestor, your great-great-grandmother or father were called a slave or a servant, it doesn't mean that they were African. What's wrong with y'all people, man? Thus, the total blacks must have included what? A good many Americans. We are Americans. American is a race, a pedigree of people. But no, y'all want to let the Caucasians take it and call themselves Americans, and y'all fools think y'all African. Man, this is sad, man. In 1698, 3 fugitive Negroes were reported in North Carolina, of whom one was an American. Similarly, a list of Negroes imported into Virginia, 1710 to 1718 by sea, includes at least 69 Indians, mostly from the Carolinas. Once again, if you came from water, what they call sea, you see, they're tricking y'all with that. They call the river the sea, because anytime they use the word sea, anywhere, anytime before the 1700s or the 1700s, it doesn't necessarily mean across the Atlantic Ocean. You feel me? It was from the Carolinas. They were Indians. But because they came by sea into Virginia, they classified them as Negroes or slaves. Likewise, list of Negroes brought into New York. We're talking about in the 1736, 1715 to 1736, include what? Many slaves or probable or stated American ancestry from what? Caucasian, Jamaica, Honduras, and the Carolinas and Virginia. Like I told y'all before, man, they were taking American Indians all over the Americas from the Caribbean. You'll be surprised the amount of y'all in the United States that have ancestry from the Caribbean. We are one people. Let me stop sharing here for a second, man. I don't know if y'all feeling me here, man. I don't know. Wow, man. I'm telling you, man. Wow. Wow. My brothers and sisters, man, if you're with me, man, drop some sevens, man, because we're in Sunday school right now. Okay, we're in Sunday school right now. Okay? Drop some sevens in the chat right now, because we just getting started. Okay? Teach your children, family. Teach your children, man. That's why we are being treated the way we are being treated in this place. And you think the police run you down or they shoot you because you're black. No, that's not it. You're black only in status, not the color of your skin. And the moment you give that up, I promise you, my brothers and sisters, things are going to change. They're going to change. Now, don't get me wrong, man. I'm not saying that a few people, a few may or may not have a few, few blood drops of African in them. But I guarantee you this: you have more blood from Europe than you have African. I could promise you this. And a lot of you may think I got something against African. No, that's not it. It's because I know the truth. So it may seem a little bit biased, but a lot of times the truth is biased. Because all these African slaves did not come here. It was just too costly. When I already proved to you and show you, and I'm going to prove it to you again, that Queen Elizabeth, okay, she was broke. King James was broke. Okay? They were broke. So how could they have possibly, okay, do commerce all the way in Africa, then bringing these people into the Americas? They were broke. It was only Ferdinand and Isabella, okay, And the only way they gained so much status is because they defeated the Moors. But now we have to, it begs the question, were King Ferdinand and Isabella, were they of a pale complexion or were they of the Caucasian race? No, they were not. Literally, the people who defeated the Moors were people who looked just like them, because that's what they were doing in Europe, fighting each other in Rome. Okay? They were just fighting each other. Come on, man. Let us proceed. Share the screen again, because this is vital information. Like I said, reading is fun for the mental. All right? 13 pages. All right? It's taking a little longer because I'm taking my time and breaking things down in between. So just work with me here, fam. All right? In the 1715 to 1717 period, the Vistry Book of King William Parish, Virginia, records 1 year robbing an Indian, and 2 years later robbing a Negro. What you don't realize is the word robbing, okay, Robin, which I'm going to break that down for y'all, hence Robin Hood. Oh my God, Chief, I don't think they're ready for this. I don't think they're ready for this. Woo! Man, I'll be so excited, boy, I tell you. I'll be so excited. I know my ancestors are rejoicing, man. That's why I'm so highly favored, because they know. All right, they know. Okay, let's read this again. In 1715 to 1717, the period, the Vistry Book of King William's Parish, Virginia, records 1 year robbing an Indian, and 2 years later robbing a Negro. All right. In a similar manner, in a 1691 list of Negro slaves in York County, Virginia, includes Kid Indian, because a lot of times we did not carry what we call last names, right? So you would find a lot of people with just they give their last name the Indian, or just the Indian. Okay, and I'm putting y'all on to game, right? While in 1728, a list of Negroes at the home house of Virginia planter includes Indian robbing, right? Robbing what? Incidentally, okay, no, robbing incidentally is a common name for a slave of American ancestry. Okay, robbing is what? An Indian name, okay, or incidentally, a name used for Indians, slaves of Indian ancestry. Okay, so when you hear the term Robin Hood, man, it was just black nobles coming here to rob the Indians. That's why, once again, this make them slaves. They call us slaves, Robin. I'm gonna read that again. Let me highlight that for y'all real quick. Okay, let me highlight that for you real quick, just in case, for those of you who can't see it too well. All right, here we go. Robin, incidentally, is a common name for slaves of American ancestry. And when people hear ancestry, they think, well, you're talking about a certain percentage. No, we're talking about full-blooded Indians. Okay? Full-blooded Indians. Let's read some more. In 1748, there was an advertisement in New York for a Negro man servant called Robin, almost of the complexion of what, an Indian. Huh? So Robin, Indian, had a certain complexion, copper colored, okay, swarthy. Talks good English, can read and write and plays the fiddle. Does that sound familiar? Fiddle, huh? Go look at Roots. See how we putting the pieces together now? In 1723, Virginia adopted a law depriving free Negroes, mulattoes, and Indians of certain basic civil rights. The act was disallowed by British officials, but in 1735, Lieutenant Governor Couch defended it by asserting that he wanted to make a perpetual brand upon free Negroes and mulattoes by excluding them from the great privilege of a freed man. He wanted to make the free Negro sensible that a distinction ought to be made between the offspring and the descendants of an Englishman, with whom they never were to be equal. Since the act applied to Native Americans and half Americans, mulattoes. Now, before I continue, Gutch language should seem to include them under the general category of free Negroes and mulattoes. Now, mulatto meant different things in different centuries. Okay, at first, in the early Spanish colonial America, a Negro was literally a mixture of American Indian and a so-called black individual from Europe. Because why? Mulatto did not mean Caucasian and so-called black. Why? Because Caucasians were not in the picture, period. So in Spanish America, a mulatto was a mixture of an American Indian and a so-called European, okay? Which of course they were people of color, all right? A welcome clarification of terminology was provided in 1719 by the government of South Carolina when it decided, and for preventing all doubts and scruples that may arise that ought to be taxed on musties and mulattoes, etc. All such slaves are not entirely Indian shall be encouraged as Negroes, encountered as Negroes. The significance of this act is that all later enumerations of Negro and Indian slaves in South Carolina have to be analyzed with the thought in mind that many Negroes were probably one half or other fractions of American ancestry. Okay? I promise you, right? A lot of these so-called Negroes running here calling themselves African Americans, they even if they are partly American Indian, they have more American Indian than these natives. I guarantee you that. I could guarantee you that. And that's facts. Facts. All right. Now, for those of you who don't know what enumerate means, it means mention one by one. It's just to mention one by one. All right. That's what enumeration or enumerate means. Okay. Now, let's read again. New Jersey was also an area where Americans and Africans intermixed with considerable frequency. In 1734, an advertisement appeared for the recovery of Juan. Juan. He is half Indian and half Negro. He plays the fiddle and speaks good English, and his country, what? Indian. His country is Indian. Also, Indian was called, country was called Indian, right? Indian country. Okay? So, you could put on your ID, Indian country. Like it's just so many ways, man, to reclaim who we are. But we'll get into that in some other time, right? One was not specifically called a Negro, but in 1747, an advertisement read, or reads rather, runaway on 20th of September last from Cohanacy, a very lusty Negro fella named Samson, aged about 53 years, and had some Indian blood in him. He had with him a boy about 12 to 13 years of age named Sam, was born of an Indian woman and looks like an Indian, only his hair. They both talk Indian very well, okay? And it unlikely they have dressed themselves in the Indian dress and gone to Carolina. Similarly, in 1778 advertisement we read, was stolen from her mother, a Negro girl about 9 or 10 years of age named Diana. Her mother's name is Cash, was married to an Indian named Lewis, near 6 feet high, about 35 years of age. He have a male child with them, between 3 and 4 of age. Any person who takes up the said Negroes and Indian shall have the above reward. From these examples, we can see that the people of mixed American African ancestry could be called Negroes. In New Jersey, Cyrus Bostale, a Philadelphia baker, aka Black, born in 1732 at Burlington, New Jersey, married a Delaware Indian woman. His son became a Quaker, okay, and an anti-slavery leader and was known as a Negro. Once again, the Quakers were not pale people, man. They bought the company Quaker. They bought it, okay? They bought the rights to it. Man, y'all just don't know, man. In Canada, 1747, 4 Negroes and a Panis, American slave escaped from Montreal, an American slave. A French writer referred to them simply as Negroes. In 1759, one Saunders, a runaway slave, was described in South Carolina as a Negro man of the Musty breed. Musty meant either European American or European American African. In 17, and when we talk about European, we're not talking about the pale man. I got to keep reiterating that. In 1775, authorities in South Carolina were ordered to apprehend John Swan, reported free Negro, or a mestizo man. And at that time, a mestizo was a Spaniard mixed with an American Indian. And once again, we are not talking about the Caucasian man. All right. In the 1780s, certain white Virginians, and again, we are not talking about the pale man, we are talking about the status white. Certain white Virginians began to agitate for the termination of the Giscaskin Indian Reservation in Northampton Country. You have to remember that Caucasians were not called white, okay, before the 1960s. Okay, you got to realize that they were not called white. The reserve was described as an asylum for what? Free Negroes, and it was alleged that the Americans, I'm going to repeat that again. All right, reading is fun for the mental, man. You got to read with clarity, man. Let us go. Let's read this here. Let's read this whole little sentence here for a second. All right. The reserve was described as an asylum for free Negroes, and it was alleged that the Americans have at length become nearly extinct, there being at this time not more than 3 or 4 genuine Indian at most. The place is a harbor and convenient asylum for ideal set of free Negroes. Okay, because Negro was synonymous with American Indian. In 1812, it was argued that, okay, the place is now inhabited by as many black men as Indians. The Indian women have many of them married black men, and a majority probably of the inhabitants are blacks, have black blood in them. The real Indians are few. Okay. Now, once again, we have to put that in context. Remember, black is synonymous with slave. Okay, keep that in mind. So you could have been an Indian and still be so-called black based on complexion, but because you lost that Indian status, you became black. So you see how they trick you there. It's all technology, because a black person at that time is the same as an Indian, but because you lost your status as being an Indian, you were considered black as slave. Okay, because why? A lot of these Indians, to make their family better off, they had to give off their Indian, or give up their Indian status and take on the status of being black. Okay, just so y'all know. The reserve was divided, allotted in 1813, and by 1832, whites had acquired most of it. In 1828, the Gingaskin descendants were described as respectable Negro landowners. This episode reminds one of Young's attack upon the Caribs of Saint Vincent in 1795, and also of more recent attempts to allot and acquire Indian lands. And that's what it's all about. Okay? Calling you black so that you will lose your title of your land being American Indian. And my people just don't seem to get it at all. Okay? I'm going to repeat that again. This episode reminds one of Young's attack upon the Caribs of Saint Vincent in 1795, and also of more recent attempts to allot and acquire Indian land. If you had retained your American Indian status, they couldn't take your land like that. So they had to allow you or persuade you to be classified as black. Okay? A similar attack took place upon the Pumanque Mataponi in 1843, which failed, and against the Nottoway from 1830 to 1878, which succeeded. By the 1840s, at least 2 Nottoways were registered as free Negroes. The heirs of one family were described in 1878 as all being Negroes and very poor. Why? Because they took on the status of being black when they had owned the land. Hence, we were landlords, we became tenants. Okay? Now, aside from Virginia, where persons descended from female Americans imported after a certain date could obtain their freedom, and all slaves of American ancestry remained slaves throughout the entire duration of slavery unless they were emancipated or ran away. So once again, we had became slaves. It doesn't mean that you were a slave that came from across the Atlantic. People tend to confuse coming by sea to the Atlantic Ocean. No. If you came from Virginia to the Carolinas via water, they call that the sea. Oh my goodness. Woo! At the end of the 18th century, Bob, a carpenter fellow of yellowish complexion, musty, has bushy hair, ran away. He was said to speak more proper than Negroes in general. That would be somebody they call a Clay Thompson. Okay? I'm just putting this in perspective for y'all. All right? Other persons of American ancestry who were free also were called black or Negro. Now, let me ask you a question. Why in the hell would you call a free American Indian a Negro or black? Why? It is because they could be considered black based on complexion, or period, because they were slaves. Paul Coffey, the noted half American, half African merchant, was called at various times an Indian, a black man, and this free and enlightened African. He signed petitions with Indian men and all free Negroes and mulattoes. Other examples of similar nature abound. One author writes that the Sampsons and the Galles, property owners and school teachers through predominantly of Indian blood, were leaders among the free Negroes of Petersburg, Virginia in what, 1870? They were landowners. They were teachers, okay, predominantly of what, Indian blood. So why are you calling them Negroes? Why are you calling them black? Obviously, they did not come here on the transatlantic slave trade. Virginia tax rolls and the census records from 1780s to 1850 have numerous examples of people of Indian tribal identity being classified as what? Free people of color or as mulattoes. In fact, the practice was almost universal. Some were also classified as FN, which is free Negro, or as B, as black, in various records. So because you go and look at your ancestral records, or if those censuses, that's how these so-called natives trick y'all, man. And you see FN, free Negro, or B for black, you think they were slaves from Africa. In certain counties, such as Southampton in 1830, in parts of Delaware, virtually free non-whites were categorized as free Negroes, although enumerated under the free people of color column. These lists include people of Nantucket and other tribal groups. Okay? Remember, enumerate means to mention. Okay? All right? One by one, just so y'all know. Okay? Or a number of things, but to mention. All right? Under certain conditions, persons of African descent could be legally classified as members of an Indian tribe or an Indian. Why? Because these people, they look the same. So I tell people I'm not knocking Africans. Okay, we are all the original people of the planet. Okay? I just detest the fact that people try to take away our ethnicity, our nationality, and our race. Indian is American, American is a race. Okay? And it's a disrespect that we keep calling our continent white America. It's a disrespect to our ancestors. It's a disrespect calling these people Americans when they're United States citizens. It's a disrespect to our ancestors, calling them Africans. In a treaty with the Creek Nation, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs noted in 1832, all right, an Indian, whether a full or half blood, who has a female slave living with him as his wife, is the head of the family and entitled to a reservation of land. Also, free blacks who have been admitted as members of the Creek Nation and are regarded as such by the tribe, if have families, are entitled to reservations of lands. All right. Now we have to once again go back to the word black and put it in context. Okay, black just meant slave. It was synonymous with slave. It doesn't mean that you came across the Atlantic Ocean. I have to keep reiterating that. I have to keep pounding that in your head. Because until you get it, we will not get redress. We will not get so-called reparations. Because these pale people didn't do anything to you. In 1860s, all persons of African ancestry who had been slaves were granted by treaty citizenship in the 5 civilized tribes of Indian Territory. Why? Why is that? Because they made the claim that they were Indians. They couldn't take that away from them because they couldn't prove it. Okay? The general trend, however, was to enroll the more visible part African persons as freedmen, citizens, and to restrict their tribal status. When lands were allotted in 1880s to the early 1900s, most such persons were not allowed to assert American ancestry and were therefore denied future rights as Indians. During the Seminole Wars, a new term used to have been coined, that of Indian Negroes. Okay? A new term, all right, that was used to be coined, that of Indian Negroes. One source, General Wiley Thompson, asserted in 1835 that they are descended from the Seminoles and are connected by consanguinity. Now, for those of you who don't know what consanguinity means, it means that the fact of being descended from the same ancestor, meaning that, so if they are stating that, yes, you could call us what you want, but we are of the same ancestry as the Indians. Just because you made us slaves and call us Negroes, once again, you see, you have to know the word play. Okay, you have to know the word play. Consanguinity means the fact of being descended from the same ancestor. So let's go read this again. Okay, one source, General Wiley Thompson, asserted in 1835 that they are what? Descended from the Seminole and are connected by consanguinity, meaning that from the same ancestor, American Indian. Other writers referred to them as the hostile Negroes and mulattoes in the Seminole Nation, or simply the Indian Negroes. Few white writers seem to have continued the use of Indian Negro. However, in the Yuchi language, mixed people of that type were referred to as Gupchi Chila, or red black people. In North Carolina, many people of Lumbee Indian identity were categorized at times as Negroes. In 1837, Charles Oxenden of Robeson County was punished as a free Negro. In 1842, one of the Bravely family was called a Negro, while in 1857, a Chavez was charged as a free person of color with carrying a shotgun. He was not convicted because the act specified free Negroes, and he was charged as a free colored. So you see, once again, using certain words, right? A free Negro, a free colored, he got off because they had different specification for those words. The court stated that free persons of color may be persons colored by Indian blood. You hear that? The indictment cannot be sustained. Oh man, we almost there. We almost there, right? 13 pages. We got 5 more to go. Okay, we got 5 more to go. Let me come back here real quick, man. I hope y'all are not bored yet, man. I hope you guys are not bored yet. All right. Somebody asked, what book is this? I put it in the chat. That's from Jack D. Forbes. All right. So Naomi, and Palmer, I put it in the link below. So you have that, okay? So I hope you guys are still with me. If you're still with me, go ahead and type some nines. I know, we sometimes reading could get a little tedious, but I hope you guys are still up. So go ahead, type some nines, tap some nines, I mean, we here in Sunday school, all right? Drop some nines in the chat, drop some nines in the chat, drop some nines in the chat. Let's do this. Drop some nines. We almost done. All right. We almost done. We almost done, lineage. We almost done. All right. We almost done. Let's go back and share this. This is Sunday school. All right. Sunday school. Let us go. Boom. Let us proceed. Let the screen populate. Give me 1 second. Here we go. All right. In a similar situation, some white men took away guns from the Pamunkey people in Virginia in 1857. Like somebody such as Chris Brown was a Pamunkey, right? So I just want to give you an example, right? The governor had them returned by stated, if any become 1/4 mixed with the Negro race, then they may be treated as free Negroes or mulattoes. Virginia at this time defined a mulatto as 1/4 or more African. All right. Now it changed. Now you see in that time in the 1800, it changed from one with an American Indian with an African. All right. A mulatto in the 1600 was now a so-called black European mixed with an American Indian. So but today, okay, in a mulatto would be somebody of Caucasian and so-called black. You see what I'm saying? So as you could see, these terms, okay, they're coined with a different definition based on the century that they were used, okay, or the period rather, okay. In Louisiana, 1856, the Black Code was said to refer to offenses including involving slaves, Indians, and free persons of color. Many narratives of ex-slaves recorded in 1830s reveal Indian what ancestry. Okay, one such person called an Indian was Uncle Mobile Hobson of Virginia. He says, "It come time to marry," and married a black woman. That make me black. I pose. All right. In 1871, a white writer of Maryland observed, in Dorchester, country of Indian Creek, some of the last Indians of the peninsula struck their wigwams towards the close of the last century, and there are now no full-blooded aborigines on the eastern shore, although many of the free-born Negroes show Indian traces. All right. Yet still, they would try to make the claim there are no full aborigines, but yet still, all the Negroes keep showing Indian traces. Why is that? Why is that? You trying to tell me our people married all these natives? Come on, man, all these pale-skinned natives? No, no. All right, no. Don't be tricked by the wordplay, okay? Quite commonly, however, some of the freeborn Negroes of the Eastern Shore continue to identify and survive as native people, okay? The whites often tried to deny their Indianness, as in 1856, when a marker was erected to commemorate a woman who had testified that the Nantucket people of Delaware had African ancestry. The Indians were referred to as the marker as an arrogant Negroes that assume to be what they are not. They always want us to think that whenever we claim that we're Indian, which we are the original ones, they think we are, it's because of arrogance. You know what I mean? Oh, we became Indians because of these natives. No, we did not become Indians because of them. These people became Indians because of us. Okay? Facts over feelings. It's a reverse situation. They flipped the narrative. Okay? During the 18th century, most persons of mixed especially if free, were classified as mulattoes, musties, or persons of color. The term Negro was perhaps less likely to be used for such people, except as noted in the examples above. This usage continued in some states, such as the Carolinas and Virginia, well into the 19th century. Okay, we almost done. We almost done. We got about 4 more pages to go. Drink a little water. All right. For example, the jurist of South Carolina noted in 1852, it is not according to the use of the language in this region to speak of one altogether black as a person of color. All right. So it's just saying that. Okay. Not because everybody's black, we have to altogether consider them a person of color, right? Because once again, black men slave. The phrase is almost exclusively applied to one of mixed blood and color. A change took place in such states as in Indiana in 1817, Kentucky in 1852, elsewhere 1850s, early to early 1900s, as the term Negro came to encompass most persons of part African descent. Partly, okay, part. It never said African, part, okay? This change may not have affected people of solely African and African descent, especially if the African ancestry predominated, since many but all Native Americans were brown or you know what? Let me read this again because, like I said, I like to get hype. I get hype when I read these things because you see, I tell people documentation beats conversation. Always. I don't care what you tell me. Documentation beats conversation. Okay? I don't care how much these natives talk. I could go into all my documents and shut them down. All right. So all the emotional stuff, I don't get involved with that. All right. Give me 1 second. Let me just grab my charger real quick. Because when it comes to they can't play with me, man. I'm well versed. All right. I know my stuff. That's the difference between me and a lot of people. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Let me just plug this in. All right. Good. We good to go. All right. Now, I'm going to read this highlighted section because I want this to sink in. I want to beat that into your head. So I'm going to read it twice. Okay? This change may not have been affected people of solely African and American descent, especially if African ancestry predominated. Now, this is what I want to highlight here real quick. Boom. 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 Let's highlight that here for 1 second. Okay? Here we go. Since many, but not all, Native Americans were brown or dark-colored without African ancestry. So what is that telling you? Not every so-called black person in the United States is from Africa. Okay? It says what? Since many, but not all, Native Americans were brown or dark-colored. Okay? The majority of them were dark colored. Okay, they're not talking about the Chris Browns. They're not talking about the Clay Thompsons. They're not talking about the Stephen Currys. Or although they're still American Indians, they're talking about the darker ones, the ones that are deeper brown. Okay, many of them. Okay, were what? Full-blooded Indians. All right. They said their descendants with mixed only with African blood would vary, likely to be as Negroes by most Europeans, especially in North America, where special terms for such persons such as Zambos, Grifo, Lobo, Casufo, Cobra, Cobore never became current. Man, listen, man. The United States Census also tended to expand the use of the term black or Negro. All right, they extended it, they expanded it because they was like, you know what, man, we got to bring James Brown on the scene and tell these people be black and proud because we know we got a few censuses coming up, man. We got to, these people, okay. The United States Census also what tended to expand the use of the terms black or Negro. In 1890, black was to be used for all persons having 3/4 or more black blood. Now, what black blood means? Once again, black blood just means slave blood, that you were enslaved. It doesn't necessarily mean that you came from over the Atlantic Ocean. In 1910, black was supposed to be applied only to full-blooded Negroes, while the matter of who was an Indian was left to the enumerator. Okay? The term mulatto was to be used for all other persons having some proportion or perceptible trace of Negro blood. Okay? Where are we here? It is certain that large numbers of Americans or part Americans were classified as Negroes or mulattoes under these rules. I'm going to read that again. It is certain that large numbers of Americans or part American were classified as Negroes or mulattoes under these rules. For example, one of Mataponi, only one person was counted as Indian by the census out of a reservation population of at least 40 persons. Okay, even if they were all dark skinned, they chose one person to be an Indian because why? They had to make the rest of them black to take away their Indian status. Okay, similarly, the Pussy Patuk of Long Island had only one person counted as Indian, doubtless because the rest were enumerated as Negroes or mulattoes. So, in other words, they were added in one by one as Negroes or mulattoes to take away their Indian status. Okay, so most likely the most light-skinned one they call an Indian, and the darker ones they call them they were enumerated as Negroes or mulattoes. So you see again the wordplay, right? All right, just so y'all know, man, I like to break this down for y'all to know exactly what happened. Okay, the 1910 census once again counted 2,255 Negroes who were part Indian and were enrolled members of the tribes. All right, but another group of 1,793 tribal members were of mixed European, African, and American ancestry. Thus, only slightly more than 3,000 persons who were part African were counted with the Indian population as compared with the hundreds of thousands who were doubtless counted as Negro or mulatto because of living away from a federally recognized reservation. So once again, because they were taken out of the community that was considered a federally recognized reservation, they were no longer called Indians. So once again, y'all Negroes in the hood, y'all are Indians. You're just not living on federally recognized reservations, but you are on a reservation called a ghetto, called a project, but you are the American Indian living in the ghetto. Man, you living in the hood. You're Indian. You're hood Indian. In 1930, a person of mixed Indian and Negro blood. Once again, remember, Negro what? Remember when they came into the Americas, they say Negro de Terra, Negroes of the land. So you could have been mixed with somebody from Jamaica. You could have been mixed with somebody from Cuba. You see what I'm saying? Like, y'all got to look at the word play, man. I'm breaking this down for y'all. In the beginning was the word. Shall. Let's read this again. In 1930, a person of mixed Indian and Negro blood shall be returned as Negro unless the Indian blood predominates and the status as an Indian is generally accepted in the community. That's why they had to change it, because when they were doing it by blood quantum, too many Negroes was coming up as Indians. So they had to change it and say, nah, man, we can't do the blood thing. Let's do it by the Dawes rolls. Let's do it by the census. Okay? So if you were not on one of the rolls, that's how it's that paper genocide. You feel me? By 1940s, all African American hybrids were to be counted as Negroes, unless the Indian ancestry very definitely predominates and is universally accepted as an Indian. All right? Even pure blood Indians could be counted as what? Black. Now, let me ask you a question, man. Why would a pure blooded Indian, if they were the natives, be called black? You see, something is wrong with my people, man. And when I make an attempt to teach them, man, they make me the enemy, man. I don't get it. I don't get it. You know what? A lot of us are ready for this. A lot of us are ready for this. Many are called, but chosen a few. You know, and it's only going to take the chosen to make this happen. I know I'm chosen. Been chosen. Let's read this again. Even pure blood Indians could be counted as blacks in Nevada in 1880 when the census enumerated categorized 90 members of a Darkwater Shawnee tribe in that manner. Okay? They put them as blacks and they were pure bloods. Now, let me ask you a question. How is it possible for so-called black people to be pure-blooded Indians? But yet still, they don't have pure-blooded Indians running around. Why? Because you accepted the category of being called black or African American. That's what they are telling you in layman's terms. It's codes. Okay? It's codes. We are the pure-blooded so-called American Indians. You got these $5 Indians taking over places and y'all think y'all African. In the state of Delaware, more recent decade found that if a person said he was an Indian, he was recorded as what? Either black or white, depending on his appearance. So once again, a Stephen Curry would be considered white. You know what I'm saying? So pay attention to that. The 1990 census was so arranged that any African American mixed blood who checked both black and Indian boxes were what? Counted as solely what? Black. Paper genocide. In summary, it seems clear that many persons of Native American ancestry, in whole or part, have been at times classified as Negroes or black. Let us just highlight that little section here again. Okay? Just read this highlighted section. In summary, it seems clear that many persons of Native American ancestry, in whole or part, meaning that full-blooded or partly, have been at times classified as Negroes or blacks. This is a matter of considerable significance in the scholar seeking to understand the actual ethnic or racial identity of non-white persons in North American British colonies and in the United States over the centuries. Earlier studies have shown the significance of the terms mulatto, musty, sambo, zambo, and colored as indicating persons of what? American or possibly part American ancestry. Okay? Zambo, sambo, Americans. Collectively, these studies serve to show the probability of a much greater degree of intermixture between Africans and North Americans than has hitherto been widely acknowledged. But, of course, it might be argued that this is old hat, especially to the people in the Afro-American community who have long been aware of extensive Indian ancestry and who have, at least since the Civil War, self-consciously utilized the terms Negro or black and of course colored to encompass people of mixed Native American and African descent in individuals such as Anne Plato, Paul Coffey, Crispus Attucks, Hiram Revels, and many others have long been referred to as Negroes in spite of having perhaps at least as much Native American as African ancestry, and even when living in Indian communities, as was the case with Attucks and Coffee. From the scholarly perspective, the logic of white racism, which has tended to classify people in very arbitrary ways, in neither the logic of genetics nor of bona fide ethnicity. The mixture of African and American does not make a person black. Once again, let me highlight that for y'all, because I'm giving y'all the jewels. So if you want to continue to be dead in law, you want to be considered a slave, continue to be black. Okay? Let's read this again, this highlighted section. Very, very key. In conclusion, the mixture of African and African American does not make a person black or a Negro any more than it makes one automatically an Indian. Okay? Because there were also so-called black people coming from different parts of Europe as well. Okay, so because you're not African, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an Indian as well. All right, so let's just keep that in mind. All right, ethnic scholars must aver that it is both pernicious and dangerous to read into the evidence and to affirm for their earlier times the pronouncements of a dominant social caste. Okay, it is dangerous. All right, it is dangerous for the social and dominant casting of putting our people in this category. Okay, they're myths. It's a myths. It is a myth. Their prejudice and the system of classification and nomenclature must all be subjected to critical and imperial re-evaluation. Okay, and we have the notes, and then we have, lastly, give me one second. Lastly, we have the critique. The article is well written and researched. You hear that? The article is well written and researched. The author has searched the literature pertaining to Blacks and Indians and found that there are many cases of confused and deliberate distortions. Deliberate distortions. These distortions had and have a profound impact on the way we behave. Many examples of the use of overgeneralization are given. The reasons for this behavior are complex and varied. As an example, we find the white Virginians agitating for the termination of the Jengaskin Indian reservations in Northampton County. Forbes cites the reason for this agitation as the area was an asylum for the free Negroes and the presence of Indians was small, if any. The date for this event is given as 1780. So once again, yes, they were so-called Negroes, right? Indians, but they classified them as Negroes. All right. So because they are saying that it was an asylum for Negroes, they lost the status and they lost the land. Once again, you lose your status, you lost your land, you lose your rights. Okay. In the 18th and 19th centuries, immigrants coming into the United States were often confused by many languages that were spoken at the port of entry into the new land. The Spanish, for example, used Negro to refer to a black man or a negra to refer to a black woman. Mulatto and many meanings. Among these were mule, mulatto, or person of mixed ancestry, part black and part white, more for the most recent, right? To associate word usage with racism is quite proper, but it is not always so. There is no flexible relationship between a stereotype and behavior. Indian children of high school age at a funeral of an Indian attended by a black man use the words nigger, gigolo, and so forth. Okay, now, real quick, before I conclude, I want to show y'all a couple more things real quick. Varizona, okay? Let us go. And I also put that in the description for y'all, all right? Let us go here. Give me one second. All right, let me just go ahead and give me one second. Let me pull this up for y'all. Okay, here we go. Once again, 1524. All right, 1524, Varizona. All right, I put that in the description for y'all. Okay, let us go here. They're talking about the people that they met in the Americas. I also put that link in the description for y'all, right? For that book. Okay, Varizona said, okay, what did Varizona say? Varizona said, they are of dark color, not much unlike the Ethiopians, and their hair black and thick and not very long, which they tie in the back, in the head, and the shape of a little tail. Now, let us Keyword, unlike the Ethiopians. For those of you who don't know what unlike means different from, not similar to. Okay, so now it says different from, right? Which is unlike, but it's saying that it's a double negative, which is saying what? Okay, it is saying they are dark in color, not much unlike. So meaning that they are looking like the Ethiopians in complexion. So why would they once again compare the people that they saw in the Americas in 1524? Why would they compare the complexions to that of Ethiopians? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Come on, man. All right. Let us go look at, give me 1 second here now. I'm going to show y'all one more thing before I get out of here. Because I've been on for almost 2 hours now, right? Sunday school. Boom. 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 Let us look at the etymology of the word indigenous, because we use that word very loosely. Okay, but we have to put that in context. That's why the UN, in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, they leave it up to the individual to determine who is indigenous. So now anybody could be claimed indigenous. That's why these natives could call themselves indigenous, because all natives means is to be born. Now, let me show you the trickery in that. You see, like I told you, man, Chief Kalinago is here to enlighten you, okay? Let me break that down for y'all real quick. Indigenous has two meanings, right off the rip. Born or originating. Boom. Right here. 1640s. Born or originating. Okay? So therefore, anybody born could be indigenous. That's why the palest person could be indigenous. That's why these natives get away with it. That's why they have been acknowledged by the UN as the natives, because it means to be born or originating. The problem is the ones that are actually originating, they're here dying to be African, and dying to be African American, and dying to be called black. That's the problem. You see? So when I tell people I'm indigenous, I tell them I'm indigenous from both perspectives, born and originating. However, the natives are just born, they're not originating. You see the difference? I hope y'all see the difference. It is in the word. Indigenous, born in a country, a native. That's all native means. Born in a country at that time in the 1600s. Okay? Born. Well, pardon me, let me rephrase that. In the 1600s, native actually meant originating or born, just like indigenous. So we have to keep that in perspective. All right. But today, native, okay, native, they claiming are the originals. They are not the original, because they are still using that context. They are only born. All right. So yes, they are native, but they are not original natives. They are born natives. They are United States citizens. All right. So that's why they could get away with this. All right. So I just want to kind of point that out for y'all. So that concludes the Sunday school today. All right. I hope y'all found some value in this. Once again, this is strictly for educational purposes. All right. This is by no means to degrade anyone. This is just to bring the truth out. Okay. That's all it means, for educational purposes. So, my brothers and sisters, don't be afraid to accept who you are. Don't be afraid to embrace who you are. Don't be afraid to let go the color of law, the status of being black, which means slave. It's synonymous with slave. Okay. Even if you truly think you are African, then claim one of the African lands. Okay. Because as black, you're not going to get anywhere. Okay. As colored, you're not going to get anywhere. All right. Yes, indeed, American Indian is still a misnomer, but I would rather call myself that because it's in the Constitution. Okay. We have House Resolution 331. All right. So the point I'm making is this. All right. We have to start moving. We have to start making a trajectory towards who we truly are. Okay. So I'm working on a few things, like I said. I'm putting back things. I'm getting back into setting up shop, creating the organization. So I'm going to start reaching out to people because, like I said, it's not going to take a lot of us. Okay, we're going to have a structure in place. We're going to have everything set up so we could step up to be who we are. Okay, and I promise you, I guarantee you that over 95% of us, okay, you know what, give and take, let's say over 85 to 90% of us that are actually in the Americas, we are American Aborigines. We are the original indigenous people. And that's facts. You feel me? That is facts. Like I said, I've read so many books. It's just even funny. It's not even funny. All right. The wealth of knowledge I have in my head. And I promise you, the prehistoric books that I read, the amount of African slaves that came into the Americas, it didn't pass 2 million. It's not even, if so much. Nowhere they said that. This is a new narrative of this 15 million. That's a lie. Exaggerated. Okay, pseudo history. But nowhere in prehistoric books they talk about all these millions of people. Okay, I mean, just recently I read a book, 560, almost 700, 600 and something pages. They were breaking down the numbers that came into the Americas, and it didn't even amount to 1.5 million. It wasn't even all that. You see what I'm saying? But yet still they were detailing the amount of so-called Negroes or so-called black people that came from Europe, because it was just easier that way. Why? Because the nobles that were coming here to steal our land, they were bringing their people with them, their servants. So it was easier to bring the people who look like us, you think that are Africans, than going to Africa, live in Europe, going to Africa, then coming to the Americas when already you had so-called Negroes here. That's number one. And thirdly, you already had your subjects, which was also Negroes and, of course, Caucasians in Europe. Okay? So what sense did it make to go to Africa and bring people from Africa? It just didn't make any sense. Economically, it just didn't add up, especially when these people were broke. These nobles, they were broke. Because at that time, fighting, the fighting they were doing among themselves had nothing to do with wealth. Okay? It was more so about religion. So wealth wasn't a factor. It wasn't until Ferdinand and Isabella it became wealth. And that was to take the wealth from the Americas. Okay? Even up to the early 1700s, mid 1700s, the British American colonies, they were not here fighting for wealth, so to speak. They were still fighting to make our people Christians. It wasn't until the late 1700s it became about wealth. You dig? So you have to know, man, in these different eras and these different days, what the words meant. Okay, what was happening in England, what was happening in Scotland, what was happening in Ireland, what was happening in Germany. You have to know so you could cross-reference to put the pieces of the puzzle together. You feel me? And where the pale man comes into play, you have to know that. So it's time to step up. Okay, more people are waking up. That's a beautiful thing. But now we have to organize. So I'm going to get back. I'm going to give it another attempt, because I did a few years ago and then some negative energy came in. Okay, and my elders advised me to shut everything down, and I did that for the past 4 or 5 years. But now I'm being instructed to open up shop and get this thing back on track. So I'm going to start putting things together. A lot of documents got to be created. So I'm working on all that right now. All right. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Y'all are absolutely welcome. All right. And just thank you for, lending an ear. Teach your children. Give them the facts. Once again, documentation beats conversation. All right. Give them the facts, not the opinions of people that get in their emotions. Give them the facts. Show them in black and white. Okay? And make sure you cross-reference everything. Do your research. Do your due diligence. All right? Never let it be a thing that Chief Kalinago said. Nah, go look at the facts that I'm presenting. All right? So y'all have a great continuation. I love y'all. We'll talk soon.